Hello and welcome to the Pages to Pixels podcast. I'm Rohan,
I'm Kirtana.
and today we're talking about Stree remotely.
It's 3-2, actually.
Stree 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the IMDb logline for Stree 2 reads, after the events of Stree, the town of Chandri is being haunted again. This time, women are mysteriously abducted by a terrifying headless entity. Once again, it's up to Vicky and his friends to save their town and loved ones. All right,
Yeah.
so before we jump into Stree 2, let's talk about the first three and the horror comedy universe as a whole, I guess, that is being set up. What
Well,
did you think of Stree 1?
I thought 3-1 was interesting. I thought it was pretty sexist, but we'll get into that in a second. I don't think it was, I mean, for starters, I actually don't think it was meant to be a universe when it started. At least that's not how it read. Um, and the movie I know did really well. I watched it in the theaters, and I thought it was interesting. It was slightly different than what we were seeing in the genre at the time. But I think outside of that, 3-1 was, like I said, I found it a little sexist, like pretty sexist actually. So, like, that kind of pulled me out of the experience. I was told by a lot of my friends who enjoy horror that they really enjoyed the movie. How about you?
Yeah, I am going to be honest. I've seen Stree 1. I saw it on Netflix.
Hmm.
I think it was on Netflix. I don't remember much of it.
Hmm.
Uh, I remember I think I enjoyed it fine enough, but I enjoyed the concept of it being a horror comedy
Hmm.
as a and not kind of the generic rom-com that we have gotten for I don't know how many years now.
Yeah.
I
Um,
just didn't find it very memorable.
yeah, I think the reason it worked really well. That movie made like so much money. I think the reason it did that well was because the comedy wasn't like I thought it was like I thought the comedy was well written. It wasn't just like a combination of errors and like it wasn't the silly comedy that usually gets thrown at us like in a horror comedy. I think that's why it did well. Like the humor did like come from the characters.
I can definitely see the appeal. Uh,
Yeah.
if anything, I could say maybe I wasn't the audience for it.
Mhm. But 3-2 has outdone any expectations and like everything. Like 3-2 has outdone like everything they thought it would be, and it went so much further.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I believe it's the number one grossing Indian movie
it is.
this year.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it did really well. It, I mean, people have been talking about it for like months on months. There was definitely a lot of hype when it was announced. And
Oh
you
yeah,
know, like there was definitely a lot of excitement, and I think the numbers showed that.
yeah.
Um, that being said, what did you think of the film?
So so it's interesting because I have been trying to talk to a lot of people. I've been looking up what people thought online also, as to what they thought of the movie. And I think my experience is very different than most people's experiences. The reason for
Mhm.
that is I didn't see this in a movie theater.
Right.
I Now I wasn't opposed to seeing it in a movie theater, but there was just no showtimes near me. Any or there were, but it was like weekdays at 11 p.m. at night. Uh, and got work
Yeah.
the next morning. Wasn't it just wasn't working.
Yeah.
So so I made the decision to wait. Eventually it came on Amazon Prime, at least here in the US.
Hmm.
I thought it was fine. Uh I think well, I mean, because I know a lot of people said it was so fun to watch a movie in a theater where everyone is laughing, everyone's having a good time. And I feel like this is one of those movies that really does feed off the crowd. And I think sometimes comedies do that because a joke that you hear in theaters can be hilarious, and you
Yeah.
rewatch the same movie at home, and it's like, okay, might make you chuckle.
Yeah. It's the same thing with stand-up comedy too. It just the experience is just so like I think the experience of both like horror and comedy is amplified when you're in like a movie theater with a bunch of people.
Yeah.
I watched the movie on Amazon Prime also. It was interesting. I thought the humor worked. I thought the horror didn't. I thought the social justice part of it definitely didn't work. I thought the performances were really good. Like if we're going to talk about like what really worked for me in the film, I thought Rajkummar Rao was great as he always is.
So yeah, always great.
I find him so just tremendously watchable. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I mean he's in everything now, and I have no complaints. Um, I also thought that all his and I mean Pankaj Tripathi we know is excellent also.
I think the humor mostly doesn't work, but it works with him.
When he's around.
Yeah.
Um, I think I also noticed that apparently this was the case also in the first movie. Like he's supposed to be like this, like homage to Sherlock in like a weird sense. So he wears
Really?
these like, well, he's at least I read somewhere that apparently it was there in the first movie, but I I feel like they were trying to like just do like a nod to Sherlock Holmes because you see him and like most of the times that he appears, he's in this trench coat, in like this long like plaid trench coat. I thought that was a nice touch. I thought Tamanna Bhatia was great. Uh, that
Yeah.
song was like I, item numbers are not what I
Yeah, it's an item number.
enjoy, but it is a night like they can call it what it is. At least they wrote story around it.
Yeah.
But she was just so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was great. Did you buy the the romance between her and Pankaj Tripathi though?
Well, I say that I feel like it was meant to like I feel like we were not meant to buy it. I think we were meant
That's
to
true.
laugh at
It was
it.
kind of the joke. Yeah.
Yeah, but hey, I mean, he seems like a good guy in the movie.
Yeah.
No, I thought that scene was pretty cool. That whole like set piece with between him and her was really fun. Um, yeah, I think like that might really be all that I enjoyed in the film. How about you?
Yeah, I think I actually think some of the humor works. I think some of the scare sequences, if you want to call them that, I think some of them work.
Mhm.
Especially I'm kind of surprised at how far they went. Um, they had the headless man,
Mhm.
uh, and I again, if I'm comparing this to Hollywood horror like The Conjuring,
Mhm.
uh, or Insidious, I this is pretty tame,
Mhm.
but horror is not a big genre in Bollywood, at least not in the mainstream. So to see
Mhm.
a mainstream movie where the goal is to really make the big bucks,
Mhm.
and not just like slip in, uh, make a make a few dollars here and there or rupees. Um, I'm kind of surprised at how far they went.
Yeah, I feel like universally, horror like makes the money. It does the numbers, but I I'm not sure how maybe how much mainstream Bollywood has been willing to explore the genre. Because before this, count on like I can count with my fingers how many
Yeah,
like good horror or like standout horror movies there've been.
yeah,
Um, I just wish that I feel like I say this about so much of the content we watch. I just wish that a little more time and attention was paid to story because I think that's where it fell apart for me. Um,
I
the
agree.
motivations didn't totally make sense. Like the whole, Sarkata, who is like the headless man, who's the main
Yep.
antagonist of this film. His motivation is that he doesn't like progressive women. Uh, so he So essentially the Stree from the first movie was a prostitute, and he thought that was too progressive or something like that, and so he killed her and her husband and burnt them while their daughter watched, which I thought was needlessly they just like what I didn't understand the real point of making that so graphic, but whatever. um
I guess
but
it is
then
to represent. Sorry, continue.
I mean, yeah, I know what I know where you're going. Like that gives like Shraddha Kapoor's character, I think, like motivation or whatever to set her up basically for what the events of this film are going to be. But I guess my whole thing with it is like I don't like progressive women is a very relatable um I don't know. It I don't like progressive
It's
women. I can
relatable.
see that's why I stop myself. I don't like women. I don't like progressive women is a thing we see in the real world.
Yeah,
Like the reality of it is horrifying. Um, but it felt maybe a little bit weirdly trivialized when this like horror movie character was doing this, because he literally what he does is he like grabs these women and he takes them away.
yeah,
um it just I just it felt like, I don't know, it just felt like an easy motivation to give him without like much exploration being done on it as a theme. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Yeah, like that I think was my biggest issue with it, because if we use the same story as context for Shraddha Kapoor's character, the motivations make sense because she's the daughter of the Stree. And I don't know, it's just while that part of it makes sense, I just um it just seemed like a very weirdly shallow sort of um motivation for the antagonist.
yeah. I see your point. I don't think it was explored well enough. Uh,
Right.
it
Yeah.
also is a little undercut with some of the humor, and again, some of the humor works, but then a lot of it feels almost like, am I watching SNL here or something?
Right.
Um, like the lullaby scene, for
Hmm.
example, sticks out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna sing it. I don't think you should either because I don't know copyright stuff. But it is like a very it's a very it's like a play on a very popular lullaby in the world
yeah,
outside. I feel like, again, I feel like if we had to like pick a part of the movie that maybe let me down, it was the writing, unfortunately, as it is in several of the films we've been talking about. um I thought that the actors did everything they could to sell this performance, to sell this story, and I'm just not sure I fully got it.
yeah. Um, I also don't really buy the. Or one thing that really did bum for me was in the midpoint when all of the all the women in the town gather up and they get to Rajkummar
Yeah,
and they go, "You're our one hope."
male savior much, you know. That was the
Yeah,
part, that was the problem I had with the first three. I was like, she doesn't
mhm,
need him to show her respect for her. Like, what the hell?
yeah. Which I will
You-
say,
Mm.
uh, by the end, he does not end up being the
Right.
savior. I
Hmm.
mean, he contributes to the fight,
Right, right,
but
right.
not so much. Like, not as he wasn't the hero, I guess.
Yeah. No, that was refreshing for sure.
Yeah. Mm,
I wish Radha Kapoor's scenes, stunts were a little better choreographed, because especially the one in when they're like in that little like town hall, like not town hall, like town center place with the Ferris
yeah.
wheel. It felt like, I don't know, it didn't look super refined. I will say though that I really like the world of Chanderi. Is that
Yeah.
the, yeah? I really like the world of it. I think I would even pitch for it to be like a TV show where like each episode like one monster comes, or like each season one monster comes during this like puja time that they have. I thought it's a very interesting world, and I really liked it. And I think it stood out to me because they go to like Rajkumar Rao and his friend. They go to Delhi, I think, to meet another friend of theirs who's moved out of the village, and they say that Chandheri still needs you. So I think that is kind of it felt like when people talk about Gotham in the Batman universe, like it
Right.
felt very real, and I
Mhm.
appreciated that.
Yeah, you know what? Do you want to talk about the crossover? It,
That's right. There is a crossover
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Oh.
Uh, so I haven't seen Virya.
Mhm.
I know that it's in the cinematic universe. I just never saw the movie.
Yeah.
So when they kind of introduce the big dog, I just thought it was a funny little gag.
Right.
CGI was awful, by the way, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
Uh, and then when Lennon actually appears, I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it was fun. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it was fun to see him there.
Yeah, I think crossovers and nods to other parts of the universe and like all these inside jokes and everything, they really work because it feels like a conversation between the filmmaker and the audience. It's
Yeah,
like we're in a room and we're like winking at each other. I haven't watched Bhedia either, but I did. Like I had heard enough about Stree 2 to know that that's when like that was Bhedia, essentially.
he didn't save the day once again.
Hmm.
He helped a lot,
Yeah.
and they would probably have been screwed without him. He definitely helped in the fight, and they probably would have lost if he didn't appear. Although it is kind of the classic. Uh, the superhero version is the character's about to get punched, and then the superhero comes in, grabs the guy's arm, and then
Yeah.
they pan to the face. It was definitely a setup in one of those moments.
Hmm.
But I like that he didn't just come out and save the day.
Yeah.
Uh, he fought, and then he continued to fight and was integral to the fight, but he was not the one who won.
Yeah. Again, that was very refreshing. I really quite liked it. I did not know that he was going to appear in the climax. I just knew that he was going to be in the movie, and I knew that that other character whose name I don't remember um was with him in Delhi. Like so that scene that you see of like him being called apparently is a part of the Bhedia movie itself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
So
had no idea he was going to be there.
mhm.
But when it happened, I was like, oh, that makes sense.
The cameo that did surprise me was Akshay Kumar. Did not see that
Yeah,
one
what
coming.
was that?
That
That
was
was
interesting. I think it was just a plant. Like I literally
okay.
think they decided to add that story, that little like what was it, like a 5-10 minute sequence because they're gonna make a movie with Akshay Kumar and they needed a way to link the universes. Because
Yeah,
it just like that's information. If you look at it, Shraddha Kapoor kind of is that character is this ex is that is the exposition character, I would say,
yep.
in this film, because anytime there's like a moment of we don't know where to go from here, we don't know what to do, she shows up and she gives information that's required to move the plot forward. He kind of did the same thing, so they
Yeah,
could have just given her one more scene and it would have worked. um I I'm calling it now. I think it's a plant for a future film in the universe. Let's see.
yeah. And I was also not a fan of that cameo. I think, or no, this is like the second Akshay
Yeah.
Kumar. Uh, oh, this is the second Akshay Kumar cameo I've seen where they do make some kind of really homophobic uh joke in that scene.
Yeah. What
I
was
can't
the
remember.
what was the other one?
It was it was an action movie from a few years ago.
Okay.
I cannot remember exactly what the
Who
movie
else was
was.
in it? Do you remember?
I'm trying
I'm
to
just
remember.
curious.
Yeah, but Akshay Kumar was he was gay in that movie.
Yeah, I don't understand why that whole set piece made no sense. It was not funny.
It was
Um,
Dishoom.
oh, yeah, I've not watched the show.
Yeah. To
No,
which
but
he said, "This is Akshay Kumar on playing a, I'm gonna say gay man. That's not what the article title was.
okay.
In Dishoom, he said, I am aware I am a gay icon."
Um, it's like when there was this one time when Ayushmann Khurrana, whose brother's in this movie by the way, Apar Shakti Khurrana,
Yeah.
he Ayushmann Khurrana put on like eyeliner and like black nail polish, and he
Mhm.
posted an Instagram picture and he titled it "Gender Fluid."
Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't
Oh,
this go through people? I don't know. Okay,
yeah.
well, um, we digress. We
Yeah.
should come back to Stree. But yes, basically, unfunny sequence, surprise cameo.
Yeah.
Um,
That brings
yeah.
me to a. So, if there was another um, Indian mythological horror story that you think deserves to be made into an adaptation, which would it be?
So I don't know if I would call Stree like a mythological story. I think it's more of like an urban legend or even like folklore. Um,
Mhm.
that being said, I think that the story of Vikram Betal needs to be adapted into a great horror film.
But what if it already was? Shameless plug
Exactly.
time.
Exactly. What if it already was? Rohan and I made a film, directed a film at our company, R&R Films. It is currently in post-production. Do you want to tell everyone more about it?
I mean, so you wrote it, so I think you should, at least story aspect.
Um, okay. So Lal Roses is a feminist take on the whole Vikram Betal story. I will not say much. What I will say is that it plays on the actual, well, the like actual story behind how a Betal is formed, which is when the last rites of a child aren't done properly. That's what we play with. And This film follows the events of a night in a family's home after they meet with a car crash. Production's done, and the film is
Yep.
currently in post production right now. Um, we're very excited to bring it to you. Um,
Yeah. No, production was a lot of fun. We had some great actors, some
mhm,
great, a great crew as well.
mhm.
Uh,
A whole
yeah.
episode about it.
No, I was just gonna say it was an awesome experience to shoot.
Mhm,
Uh, it's not the it's not the first production under Armour, but the first one done locally by us on set,
mhm.
and we're super excited for you all to see it.
Yeah. Um, we are still running a GoFundMe for the post production and possible festival run for the film. You'll find all the relevant links in the description below. Check it out if you get a chance.
This sorry, teaser's out. Looks awesome. It'll be linked in the description below. Do get a chance to watch it, share it, and can't wait for you to see the full film.
Yeah. Um, Back to the episode now after the plug. Yeah, so that's my answer, Kevin. I have over the course of the past few years realized that horror is a really excellent way to perhaps start conversations um, about things that are not so easy to digest in general. Like the reality of certain aspects of our society and life are truly horrifying. Using a horror film or like any horror piece of art as a medium to talk about that stuff can be an effective way to start conversations. Yeah.
I agree, and there's been plenty of examples
Hmm.
of it. I mean, recently, The Barbarian.
Right.
I want to say last year or maybe 2 years ago came out and touched upon a a lot of issues. A great movie. Uh, that's just one example. On if I sit down and make a list, it could be never ending.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen too many of them attempted in Bollywood, but
Yet.
I just think that yeah, I just think again it's not that I haven't seen them trying to put social messages into horror movies. It's just that I haven't seen very many horror movies, at least not in the mainstream.
Yeah. Hopefully we get to see a lot more of it.
Yeah.
Obviously the Stree universe is expanding.
Yep.
And I mean, I think a part of me is definitely excited to see like what they come up with. They did tease a vampire storyline. We also know that the Bhedia storyline is going to expand. And also they teased that little, I don't know if it's going to be an Akshay Kumar's film, but we know that technically the Sarkata isn't dead. He might come back. So yeah, interesting stuff.
All right, time for our standout scenes. So, what scene stood out for you in Street 2?
Um, the scene, I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but the Tamanna Bhatia and Pankaj Tripathi banter, little love story stood out to me
Yep.
really. I thought it was fun. I thought it was especially cool how he was like totally cool about it. Like he didn't at all acknowledge um, that she was very far out of his league, and I thought
Yeah.
that was really cool. Like he was just like, "This
Mhm.
is just Tuesday morning," and I appreciated that. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah. I'm gonna go with the opening, just
Mhm.
because I had mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I feel like this movie really did not hold back.
Yeah.
And I think that opening scene really just sets the stage of that they uh it gets pretty. I mean, I can find it creepy, but I understand that people would. I don't tend to get scared super easily in movies. But it does get really, really, it gets really violent. They try to do everything in that
Yeah.
scene. I was not expecting it to. I was not expecting them to go that far. I expected them to really almost have a Disney version of horror, you know.
Mhm.
And that scene was establishing, no, this is not going to be kid kitty or like all that. When it there's going to be a lot of comedy, but when the horror is going to kick in, it's going to kick in full gear.
Yeah, I thought it was like the scene you're talking about really worked for me as well. I get scared very easily, so I was terrified in that in that whole sequence. I also think that the image of this three, like of this woman in a ghungat, like that's scary and is like basically flying around. I find that imagery like pretty terrifying. Like I
Mhm.
like what they did with the costume. I like what they did with even her posture. It's like she's not
Yeah.
like she's a middle-aged woman. It's like I thought it was really cool.
All right, time for our ratings. As a reminder, we go on the script coverage scale of pass, consider, recommend, pass if we don't like the movie, consider if we think it's decent, recommend if we think it's great. As a reminder, this is not a recommendation, it is just a rating. With that being said, how would you rate 3 2?
Um, I'm unfortunately gonna say pass. I wish I wasn't. I did want, I mean, I heard a lot about of the hype about this movie. I was excited for it. I just think that just I I thought the themes were quite problematic and I can't get past that, unfortunately. And even if we separate the themes of the film, there was just a lot that didn't work for me. How about you?
I am, yeah, mostly in agreement. I think that, again, I mentioned this at the beginning. I don't remember much of the first three.
Hmm.
And I watched this maybe what a week or a week and a half ago, at the time of this recording. And I'm honestly forgetting a lot about this one also. It's
Yeah.
just I feel like both of these movies are a little bit forgettable. Maybe if I
Hmm.
had watched them in theater, what in a especially a crowded theater with a lot of people kind of sharing that experience with me. I
Mhm.
think it may have been different, but because of that, I'm gonna have to give this. I'm gonna make up a weird rating. It's a weak pass for me then.
I know that we didn't totally enjoy this, but I'm sure there are tons and tons of people who did. What would you recommend to someone who enjoys a movie like Stree?
Yeah. So I'm not gonna recommend a horror comedy. I'm actually gonna recommend. So the first movie was written by, produced and written by a duo named Raj and DK, who
Mm-hmm.
have gone on to do many other movies, TV shows. So I'm gonna actually recommend one of their works. I'm gonna recommend Fuzzy. It's a
Mm-hmm.
show on Amazon Prime about two men who are in hard economic times, and what they decide to do is create fake money and get into that business, if you want to call it that, or uh, crime ring. Uh, it's a great show with the characters are great, the themes are great, and it's very very intense. There's a lot of moments that are going to have you on the edge of your seat. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, one of my favorite shows in recent years.
Is that the Shahid Kapoor Vijay Sethupathi one?
Yep.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about it. I'm going to recommend a Malayalam film. It's called Mani Chitratar, which is basically it's the Malayalam version of Bhool Bhulaiya. So basically, the Mani Chitratar came first, and then it was I think the Tamil version came out, and then Bhool Bhulaiya, or the other way around. But basically, it came earlier than Bhool Bhulaiya, and it was very well done. It is so scary. Um, like I still like I don't think I would still watch it today if I was alone. So yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
would recommend.
sounds
Um,
interesting. I've never seen it. I've seen Burbuleya. Not exactly scary. I think they made it more into a
yeah.
comedy.
Well, I think the thing with like most Malayalam films is that they keep it so unbelievably and beautifully grounded that even in a horror, it's like this could literally be like my next door neighbor. I think
Yeah.
that's the reason that worked so well. And I watched this when I was honestly too young to be watching a movie like that, and it has scarred me. But if you like horror, it is definitely worth checking out. What else have you been watching?
Yeah, so I started a franchise on HBO.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's about the creation of a movie that is a that's within a big cinematic universe superhero
Mm-hmm.
movie. It's very clear it's supposed to be Marvel, although it's not called Marvel.
Sure.
Uh, and it's just the cynicism. It's really 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 interesting because especially sometimes when I do watch Marvel movies, I imagine like what is the behind the scenes of this like because it just must be so silly. Specifically, I know the Doctor Strange scene
Mm-hmm.
where Doctor Strange is going through this trippy sequence. He's like screaming, and I'm like, is this just Benedict Cumberbatch standing in front of a green screen, just screaming his head off? And then
Yeah.
you watch the show, and they're like, yeah, that kind of is what it is. It's kind of like Veep, but in the movie industry.
I have been watching, let's see. I started the new season of What We Do in the Shadows. It's their final season. Um, I love that show. I know that quite a few people have
So good.
fallen off it, but it's the best. It's hilarious. I enjoy watching it, and I'm really sad that it's ending.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that show's fantastic. As is the
Hmm.
movie. If you haven't seen it, go
Hmm.
watch both. Uh,
Yeah.
you're gonna have a great time.
Yeah. It's just I don't know. It's very. Should we call it edgy? It's just it's humor that we're not used to. With that, we come to the end of this week's episode of the Pages to Pixels podcast. I'm Kirtana,
Everyone,
and we'll see you again next week with a brand new episode. Thank you for tuning in.
thank you.